Hey everyone, and welcome to Mr. Ahmed's Math 20 video screencasts. Today we're going to be talking about histograms, which is chapter 2.3 in your workbook, and it starts on page 100 of your workbook. So we're talking about histograms, and the thing with histograms is that we use them to represent continuous data. Okay, continuous data means data that can flow from one number to another. So for example, the last example that I had given you about discrete data, I was telling you that it was the number of students, and you can't have, like if I was talking about the number of students in my class, I've got 37 students and or maybe 38 students, right? Like you could, the example that I had used was that you can't say that you've got 37.5 students, right? That's discrete data. Well, continuous data, you can have 37.5 data of something, right? So that's kind of what continuous data means, is that you can have the values in between. Okay, so moving on right to example 1, the histogram below shows the number of airplanes scheduled to arrive at the Calgary International Airport on a particular day. Okay, so you'll notice that the bars in the graph do not have spaces between them. Okay, hence the fact that it's continuous data, right? Like time is continuous. You can have from 0 to 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours, and then between 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. There is no gap, right? So there's no, the time is continuous, and that's kind of why they put the the bars side by side. Okay. So answering a few of those questions, how many airplanes are scheduled to arrive between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m.? So 2 p.m. that's 1400. 3 p.m. is 1500. So we're looking at this bar right here, right? So this would be the start of 1400, and then this would be to 1500, and then this is 1500 to 1600, 1600 to 1700. But anyway, so going back from 1400 to 1500, we've got 4 planes scheduled to arrive. What are the busiest times at the airport? How many airplanes are scheduled to arrive at these times? The busiest times are the high points right here. So from 11 a.m. to 12 a.m., from 1500, which is 3 p.m., to 4 p.m., and then from 5 p.m. or 1700 to 1800. So from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Okay, so those 3 would be the high points there, or the busiest times. What is the quietest time? So we're looking for the lowest bars on the graph, and we're gonna say that the quietest time would likely be from midnight to 6, because from midnight to 6 you only had 2 planes arriving. Okay, so this is actually a 6-hour gap right here, as opposed to these gaps being 1-hour gaps. Like this is from 7 to 8, you had 2 planes arriving. From 8 to 9, you had 2 planes arriving. However, from midnight to 6 a.m., you had 2 planes arriving. So 2 planes arriving over the course of 6 hours. Okay, so as opposed to 2 planes arriving here over the course of 1 hour. So the quietest time would be from midnight to 6 a.m. Are there any planes scheduled to arrive between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m.? That's kind of impossible to tell, because maybe those two planes arrived at 1 a.m. or from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. So that's really not a question that you can answer, and I think that's kind of the trick behind it, because of the fact that this extends from 0 to 6 a.m. or sorry, 0 from midnight to 6 a.m. And you had 2 planes arriving in that 6-hour interval. You really can't say for sure when those airplanes arrived. Okay. So yeah, so you cannot be sure if one arrived at 4 a.m. there. Okay, so we've got a few build your skills questions to work on, and it goes right on to example 2. So Arabella works as a server at a busy restaurant. She kept track of the amount of money that she received in tips per table. Draw a histogram to represent the tips she received. What is more obvious from the histogram than in the table below? So drawing your histogram, you'd have to put a decent title, so probably amount of money Arabella received in tips per table. Okay, and then you've got to put your x-axis and your y-axis. Remember that the independent variable goes on your x-axis. Okay, so that would be this right here, the amount. And then on your y-axis you put the dependent variable, and again the dependent variable is kind of the thing that you count, or the thing that you're measuring. Okay, So here's your graph. Okay, so amount received in tips. And so you can see that she got about, what is that, 12 tables gave her tips from 0 to 2. And is that 6 tables? Yeah, 6 tables from $2 to $4. And then you had 23 tables giving her tips from 4 to 6, and so on. So the question was asking, what is more obvious from the histogram than in the table below? I would say that it's the most obvious is being able to tell which like what is the average amount in terms of tip, right? So 23 tables gave her an average of from $4 to $6 in terms of tips. So that would probably be the thing that you'd be able to tell the most from that graph. So the variation in number in each tip interval. Okay, so you can kind of compare them easier on a graph than comparing the numbers together. Okay, so you've got some build your skills questions there, and practice your new skills. And yeah, so that was it for histograms there. So practice your new skills goes up to 1, 2, 3, up to 4, I believe. Yeah, and the next subtopic is going to be circle graphs. All right, guys, thanks a lot.